Access Lex Institute is a nonprofit organization committed to helping talented, purpose-driven students find their path, from aspiring lawyer to fulfilled professional. In partnership with our nearly 200 member law schools, improving access and positively influencing legal education have been at the heart of our organization's mission since 1983. We have a DC office where we do public policy, advocacy work, fund research, and analyze data related to legal education, and a field team that travels around the country delivering financial literacy information at law schools and undergraduate institutions. We're a nonprofit, and everything we do is free to you. My name is Rachel Patterson, and I'm the Director of Programs for Diversity at Access Lex. I work with students and law school administrators in an effort to increase diversity in legal education. Prior to joining Access Lex, I worked in law school admissions. I've read hundreds of applications, and I am eager to share my knowledge with you today in your quest to attend law school. At the end of this lesson, students will be able to identify several factors that are important when selecting schools. Previously, we discussed the importance of timing in the law school application process, and we also talked about the characteristics of a strong application. Let's now discuss some of the factors you might consider when determining which law schools to apply to. As you think through which law schools you want to apply to, consider where you think you will personally and academically flourish. Here are some factors you might want to examine, and this is a non-exhaustive list. So let's start by talking about location. For some students, it is important to attend a school or to live in an area with others who share one or more of their identities. For other students, trudging through the snow is unappealing. Many students want to practice law in particular cities or states. So it's important to know where most graduates from schools on your list ultimately end up working and whether those locations align with your interests. I encourage you to keep an open mind. You may end up loving a city or state that was not really on your radar at the outset. Next, let's talk about cost of attendance. Every school publishes its cost of attendance annually. You can find this information on their website under something called a 509 report. Every law school produces this report every year. This information is publicly available online. Law school is expensive, and when you create your list of schools, it is important to get a sense of total cost of attendance. Stated simply, how much will it cost for you to attend these schools? This published cost of attendance is the number that is used to determine how much a student attending that school can borrow in student loans. Now, this is not the same as your actual cost, because your eventual cost may include grants and scholarships that reduce the direct costs, and the decisions you make about housing and transportation will impact your living expenses. But it is an important and useful place to start by looking at cost of attendance. You can also get a sense of how generous the school is with scholarship aid by looking at the 509 report. It will show you how many students received scholarships and whether those scholarships were half to full tuition, less than half tuition, etc. So do strive to distinguish between cost of attendance and actual cost. Do try to avoid sticker shock. Remember, you may receive need or merit-based scholarships to reduce your actual cost. Do research need and merit options for schools on your list. Another factor that you might consider in the law school application process relates to employment. Here are some questions that you might want to ask yourself. How many graduates from a particular institution are employed after graduation? A related question that you will likely want to know the answer to is, where are most graduates taking the bar exam? This is a fair indication of where most graduates are working after law school. Another question that you can ask yourself is, how many recent graduates have JD required or JD advantage jobs? A JD required job means that graduating from law school with your JD degree is a necessity in order for you to have a particular job. For instance, if you want to be a lawyer with a big corporate law firm, you must have your JD degree, and you must have passed the bar exam. A JD Advantage job means that an employer would prefer for the person in a particular role to have a JD degree. For instance, if you decide you don't want to practice law, but you would like to work for a nonprofit organization that is doing law-related work, there may be positions where they would prefer to have someone with a JD, but the JD is not a necessity. So you can find this information on how many graduates have JD required versus JD Advantage jobs. That information is in the public domain and on school websites. Another factor that you'll want to consider will be bar passage rates. So after you're admitted to law school, assuming that you want to practice law, and even if you aren't certain if you necessarily want to practice law after graduation, most students end up sitting for the bar exam. Just as medical school students have to pass an examination in order to be able to treat patients, the bar exam is a test school graduates must take in order to become licensed attorneys. It is important for you to know, well, how are students at law schools you are considering attending ultimately faring on the bar exam? Are most students passing, and in which jurisdictions? You want to attend an institution that has the tools, resources, and staffing in place to support you academically. Yet another factor that is of importance to some students relates to ranking. Law school ranking is a touchy subject, but we would be remiss if we did not address it. There are different entities that rank law schools based on various criteria. U.S. News and World Report's law school ranking process is very popular. Reasonable minds can and do disagree as to whether the rankings are fair or whether they should matter. For some of you, you just want to attend law school, regardless of its ranking. For others of you, ranking is really important. Where you attend law school and how you perform while there can impact the types of opportunities that are available to you in the future. I encourage you to contextualize ranking along with a host of other factors to determine what is most important to you in this process. So for instance, on this slide, you'll see that these schools vary. One has a higher ranking than the other, one costs more than the other, one has more diversity than the other, one has a later application deadline than the other. These are all trade-offs, and you just have to weigh and determine where ranking falls for you in terms of importance when you think through these factors. Yet another factor that is of great importance to many students relates to diversity. Diversity is important to many students and can be particularly important to students of color, first-generation college students, and first-generation law students, and/or other students for a host of reasons. For some, it is important, helpful, or even essential to have students at an institution who share one or more of your identities and can relate to your experiences. There are multiple ways to assess diversity at an institution, and here is a non-exhaustive list. First, you can look into affinity groups. Within all law schools, there are various affinity groups like BALSA, the Black Law Student Association, SALSA, the South Asian Law Student Association, LALSA, the Latino American Law School Association, etc. Affinity groups offer spaces for students with shared identities to participate in gatherings and activities that are professional, academic, and fun in nature. These affinity groups can be extremely helpful to students during and after law school. Student body diversity is also something that's of great importance to students and can be captured on law school websites, in brochures, and other publications. The Standard 509 reports will disaggregate information by race, ethnicity, and gender, so you can see specifically, well, how many students at this institution are Black, how many are Latino, how many are Native American, how many are men, how many are women. For some students, the diversity of the faculty and staff are both incredibly important. Students often want to know, are there faculty members or staff members who share one or more of my identities? How many are there? Do they teach courses I think I might be interested in taking? Now, it's important to manage one's expectations. The reality is that at most law schools, there are very few professors of color. In fact, nationwide, there are only about 14% of law professors who are of color. So if it's really important to you that a critical mass of professors are of color, then you will want to explore faculty diversity at various institutions. Also, you'll want to look into staff diversity. So at some law schools, in fact at many law schools, they have someone on staff who's usually a diversity, equity, and inclusion officer. This is someone whose full-time job is to focus on increasing diversity for faculty, students, and staff and to provide support. You'll want to know, for the institutions on your list, do they have someone or more than one person devoted to those diversity efforts? That person could be a tremendous ally for you while you're attending law school and thereafter. Thank you for watching this presentation. We hope that you'll watch all of the videos in this series. And if you have any additional questions, please reach out to us at diversity@accesslex.org.